So I've been going through Google Scholar, reading all these papers and all. Uh,
Yeah.
I think I've got a hang of most of the things, but what is not clear is the start of this journey. Now, one presentation I found by Bala Iyer on ICTS.
Mm-hmm.
There he mentions in the 2007 ICGC meeting, in Rana Adhikari suggested that
Right. Right.
I should start with this, but then it's not clear what exactly happened. There
Okay, so I
is.
can tell you. So Rana, I was organizing the ICGC meeting at Ayutthaya.
Hmm,
So Rana was one of the invited speakers. Rana Adhikari is from Caltech,
yeah.
and two of my students, former students, Sanjeev Mitra and Anand Sengupta,
Hmm,
uh, s- uh, they were in Caltech as postdocs at that time. So Sanjeev was in with the Planck collaboration, and Anand was with LIGO. But Sanjeev also worked in LIGO.
okay.
I mean, so they so Rana had been talking to them about initiating experimental activities in India on gravitational waves, because India, we have a tradition. We have 20 years. We had even then from 1990 onwards work in gravitational waves,
Hmm,
but not experimental. There were attempts, but really didn't take off. So his idea was to start something, and both Sanjit and Anand were aware that I was quite interested in, would be such interested. So they brought him to me, and then we immediately organized a group of people, experts who were there, to discuss what are the possibilities. Okay, and then from 2007 to 9, I mean, I started looking at how to build up connections with people in terms of who all would be the people interested in experimental activities. So we looked up Professor Krishnan at TIFR, who was in the original proposal. So there was in 1995, around that period time, 1993,
hmm.
there was a proposal made by Sanjeev Dhurandhar for a 100-meter prototype. He was in
In
Ayushka
India.
at that time, but at that in India, yes.
Okay.
But 100-meter prototype, but at that point he didn't get funded. There wasn't support for it at that time. But the people involved were, only Krishnan, who had experience with precision gravitation experiments. So then, 2007 to 9, few of us started talking to each other. And in 2009, there was something called a reunion meeting at Ayutthaya, August 2009.
Okay.
That must be mentioned. So at that meeting, we already had a few people interested in this initiative.
Hmm.
And then we got together with whoever was there at that reunion meeting and actually decided. So my thought was, I was also before that trying to initiate activities in the cosmic microwave background experiments for
Yeah, I have a question on
for
that, but I'll ask you at the end.
yeah, yeah. So 2005, 6, I had been actively looking at setting up something in Ham Lake.
Hmm.
What I realized was, first you need to build up a community, and then, there's a generation of students which come out, and then you can attack a problem. So 2007, when Rana mentioned this, by 2009, I was quite convinced that gravitational wave observations would open up in about 10 years.
Hmm.
Okay, it opened up earlier than that, but I was anticipating more like 2017, 18 first detection. So we had about 10 years window. And so at that reunion meeting, we set up a consortium. Okay, and that I think is a unique experience in the sense that typically in my experience, what was happening in any big initiative in India is moment you try to propose it through an institute, too much of institute, you know, politics come. Politics in the sense of, every institute wants to get its
Yeah, I agree.
share if it is going well. Every institute is very cautious about new projects
Right.
if they're not sure it's going to, be a problem.
Right.
Whereas what occurred to me is if we have an informal group of scientists where there is no link to a institute necessarily. I mean, they are all linked. They are from various institutes, but consortium doesn't belong to any of them. It's a consortium of scientists. So we set up something called Indian Initiative in Gravitational Wave Observatory, Indigo. And that incidentally was also the name we thought we would give for the first detector, because Indian
Yeah, right.
Interferometric Gravitational Wave
So you
Observatory.
did not give it the name. I was
No, it's called LIGO India
okay.
because we wanted to make sure that it was clear that it is one of the three LIGOs.
Right.
But in future, if India does go for something on its totally on its own,
Yeah.
then maybe Indigo name can come up. We love the name, but the consortium was named Indigo. And then 2009 onwards, IUCAR supported the consortium because I was a faculty at IUCAR at that time and I was pushing very hard. And so we supported it, but never interfered. So I've made sure that as an institute, we didn't own Indigo in any way,
Right.
so that everyone felt that they were equal partners.
Right.
And then different institutes started pitching in different ways. And so 2009, 10, I think what we did was to had a modest aim of starting experimental activity by participating in the idea of LIGO Australia. So before LIGO India, the idea was to actually build a third LIGO detector in Australia. So 2010-11, we were pitching to join that at 10 to 15% contribution, in kind. But I was, honestly not a big fan of that because I did not see why a young Indian scientist, a student or engineer would spend years in Australia on a project which we don't totally own.
Right.
So then in the meanwhile, there were people like Professor Paul, who was the former director of IPR. So we met him for various reasons because he has done big projects. In the sense of building these superconducting tokamaks in IPR, and so he had. We met him, and he used to once in a while keep saying that, why are you guys contributing to Australia? Why don't you grab the project in between? So in April 2011, that actually happened in the sense that we didn't grab it, but it became very clear to the US partners that Australia may not finally get the clearance for the project. And so in April, I got some feelers from NSF through some, very well-known scientist, Abhay Ashtekar, and he has been a big supporter of this. So he tried to find out if India can take the entire responsibility instead of Australia. And then I talked to people like Dr. Kapotkar, who was the former AEC chairman and DA secretary. He was also the governing board chair of IUCAR. And he took about 5 minutes to agree with me that this was a project definitely worth taking up.
Yeah.
And from there, we never looked back actually. So we had a lot of support. And I think within months, we put in a proposal. In November, we put the proposal. And the proposal, I think what is unique, I keep repeating to people, is not it wasn't a proposal from an institute. It was a proposal by a consortium, okay, which has no legal standing. It was not a society, registered society. So I feel that sometimes we miss important things for unimportant details. So what's important is the science, and to make sure people realize the opportunity for great science. So it doesn't matter whether Institute X or Y or Z is blessing it. And we didn't have very, superstars in our group. We were all, I think in 2009 I was just not even just early 40s. Right. So we are not very senior people at that time. But I think what really stood out is our, the strength of the proposal, in the sense that, I remember giving a talk to Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who was the member secretary of Planning Commission at that time, member science of the Planning Commission. And he was very excited, and he also pointed out that he was very excited for another reason,
Hmm.
that there was a person in the 40s making the presentation. He said, usually I find big projects being,
Hmm.
put forward by people in their 60s,
Hmm.
and they don't have a long enough life ahead of them, an academic life ahead of them to see the
Right.
project through.
Oh.
So they realized that at least notionally I did have my entire academic career to devote. I think, and so are the others. I mean, there were a few others of, Dr. Sendil Raja from RRCAT joined in. He has a very interesting story. He's an experimentalist. And he joined the Rajaramana Center for Advanced Technology because of a mistake in the advertisement.
Oh.
Rajaramana Center for Advanced Technology, if you remember, I told you there was a proposal for a 100-meter prototype.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was jointly made by Ayuka and RRCAT.
Oh.
Okay, so the RRCAT, there was few people already working on vacuum and other aspects of prototype. And then at some point they were also helping Australia with their plans for what used to be called AIGO,
Yeah.
Australian Intergalactic Geo. So they forgot to, even after all that died,
Hmm.
they forgot to take it off their advertisement. So Sendil had just finished his master's from IIT Madras,
Hmm.
and he joined RRCAT thinking that he would get to work on gravitational wave observatory. He knew about the challenges, and
Right.
he was excited. I was very disappointed when the director said that this was not going to happen. And I still remember in 2011, I think, not 2011, sorry, 2009 itself or 2010. I mean, one of those Christmas time, Bala Iyer and I contacted him
Hmm.
at Indore, Indore, and he actually thought it was a joke because, in RRCAT, a lot of friends used to tease him because
Oh.
they knew
Okay.
that he had come misguided there. So he said someone was pulling up prank, writing an email saying that, India has plans for this and maybe he can join there.
Hmm.
So he came on board. So we have a lot of young people, and they're still. I mean, we are not as young now, but uh, we
Still.
form the core, base of the LIGO India proposal going forward. You know, and of course, much younger people have come in. The team is building up very fast.
So you have spent
So
more.
2007 to 2009, that was the story. I mean, it was like a build up,
Yeah.
initial build up.
Yeah. So I've spent more than a decade on this, and by the time this is done, almost 2 decades of your
Two
life on.
decades, yeah. But you should realize that LIGO US, there are people who spend 4 decades.
Oh. One question I had on LIGO US is Hanford was supposed to have 2 detectors, and one of them was assigned to India.
Yeah,
So now currently they have one,
one. Yes, because there is only one arm there.
right?
See, there's only one vacuum chamber,
Right.
but in the earlier initial LIGOs, there were two lasers running through that vacuum chamber.
Okay.
So they are two independent detectors. And that they had done because gravitational waves were never detected before. And they wanted to make sure that, two separate detectors in the same location see the signal. This is just, but later they realized that there was no scientific merit for that.
Right. I guess
Because they have
somebody has
common
a
noises.
paper on it, convincing that one should be shipped to India.
Yeah, exactly.
Satya Prakash and his team.
Yes. So Satya had, so there was a very strong science case, and this was all encaptured in a document which is called the Quick Report of 2010.
Oh,
2010.
okay.
GWIC, Gravity Wave Interaction Committee.
Yeah.
That is kind of the uniting committee between all the this thing. So the community, global community goal. So what is interesting about LIGO India is, we do not have competition. We do not have global competition. We have a global cooperation
Right.
because no single detector can do all the science by itself.
Right.
You need to join up as an array to
Right.
really get science. So I think that's very unique about LIGO initiative, which I always pitch very hard, because suppose we were to build an accelerator, say like for example the Tevatron in US versus LHC, and there's always a competition of who detects which particle, and
Right.
one or the other will do it. I mean, it's not that both need to pile up their data together.
Right.
Whereas in LIGO, and which is why we also decided to agree to the name of LIGO India, is because it is indeed going to be a part of the global array. I mean, that is what we started off by saying. Even in our science case, we never, although detection was not done, we never claimed that we will be ready by the time detection happens, because I was sure it would happen by 2020, and even in 2011 I knew that building the detector would take longer than that.
Right.
So
So when you decided to name it specifically LIGO India, why didn't Kangra, say Japan's detector, and Virgo, why didn't they choose to use the LIGO word? Is this LIGO like a
no, because LIGO is we are part of the LIGO labs. We
okay?
are together with the LIGO labs, whereas Virgo is a separate detector. Their design is different,
Hmm.
and Kagra's design is different. They are trying cryogenics.
Okay.
What you should realize is, again, this is a conscious choice, that if you want to act like, suppose you have a radio antenna, array of antennas, okay, and every antenna is different, then it's very difficult to combine the signals from them
Okay.
together. So LIGO, Hanford, Livingston, and Virgo, although they work together, it's not the ideal marriage. It would have much more ideal if Virgo was identical to LIGO US. And again, this is just this thing that Virgo is a 3-kilometer detector.
Hmm.
So in principle, Virgo's sensitivity will never match LIGO, right? Kagra is a 3-kilometer detector. It has cryogenics, but what you would like is LIGO Hanford and LIGO US, LIGO Hanford and LIGO Livingston have fairly similar noise curves.
Okay.
Same responses at different frequencies. Whereas that is not guaranteed if you change your design. You may have better sensitivity at some frequencies, you may have worse sensitivity.
Right.
But then when a signal goes through, it scans the entire frequency range.
Right.
And it always is a issue if your detector is, one of the detectors is not matching up to the others.
Right.
So in that sense, since our science goal was not the first detection, but doing astronomy with it, which is why we thought IUCA would be a good host, is essentially you have to push on the fact that we have to have a detector as good and as close in design to the two LIGO detectors. And it's my, I would even venture to say that I'm very sure that we will be transformative, because the kind of baseline plus the fact that we are similar
Right.
make a huge impact on the kind of science we will be getting out of the LIGO
Right.
addition of LIGO India.
Right. So what we are getting from LIGO is only the detector. Apart from that, the inverted pendulums and all those will be manufactured in India.
No, the inverted pendulums. So what is coming as this core optical design? So the mirrors, they are unique. So the mirrors are actually, even if we were to buy them ourselves, we'll essentially buy the same ones. So it is fast in one country because it has to be one single, very good piece.
Okay.
There won't be any defects and things like that. So it's one single piece of a huge thing, and then you have to polish it in one country, and a third country you need to coat it.
Okay.
So the expertise for the kind of things do not exist in one country. Okay, so those mirrors will come. We will initially start with the seismic stack from LIGO for the third
Okay.
mirror. So that is true. And so initially we are, but that is the core optics. But rest of it, and the vacuum and its controls and many of the control racks, everything will be built.
So the vacuum and all is IPR will be doing.
Yes.
So when did IPR come into equation? From that, sir, you were saying.
From Professor Kaur, actually, Professor Kaur got excited about gravitational waves as the next big science thing,
Okay.
and he brought in IPR. He was the director of IPR at that time. So in 2011, 12, we had more reviews globally
Hmm.
than even in India because of the science, because it is important for the entire community that they put the eggs in the right basket, right? So
Right.
they had to be convinced that India was the right place. Uh, so that time, IPR, IUCA, and RCAT became the three lead institutes. At this point, the director of construction
Hmm.
uh, services of DA is also another fourth partner, in the sense that they are taking care of the entire civil infrastructure. They help with the land acquisition. They actually ran the land acquisition thing with me at Ayuka.
Right.
We sort of involved with it from the beginning. But the site acquisition, site selection was done largely by Ayuka, but after that, the site acquisition and now the site things that are happening on the site are basically being overseen by PCSM. Once the civil infrastructure is getting ready, by that time we would have tendered out the vacuum infrastructure, which IPR is responsible for, and then that construction will start, and then we will. Then RRCAT is involved in setting up the interferometer, the optics
Okay.
and the electronic thing. Controls are part of the controls. The last part of the controls is IPR's job.
Hmm.
And Ayuka comes in from the time that data frames are created.
Okay.
And then onwards also, that's a big journey. So the data has to be transported to pretty high-end compute data centers. So
Yeah.
that will be set up in Ayuka or maybe near the site. And then the analysis will happen there.
Right. Are you having any land issues like the people of the Indian Neutrino Observatory, or are
No,
the villages
we are
okay?
very lucky. So we have the entire land in our. We have all the land we need. We have the main land,
Hmm.
main campus site, main site, as well as campus land that we need
Okay.
in the towns. So we were, of course, INO. It's very unfortunate what happened to INO.
Yeah.
But the pioneers always suffer more than the next. So in that sense, we were very careful.
Hmm.
For a long time, reporters used to get very annoyed with me because they knew where the site was, but I would never declare it, and no one in LIGO would
Hmm.
declare it because we didn't want to officially declare our site,
Right.
because unless we officially declare it as a site, we can't have troubles.
Right.
And we had many things, but I think what is important to realize is it requires a lot of human
Interaction.
interaction, connection. So I used to go for every district level commissioners meeting. I have visited the site umpteen number of times. I've met every district officer. I know many of them very well now.
Right.
So you have to make them feel that the scientists are really keen on that, right?
Yeah.
So they should see that personal touch. I think that's very important, and that I would say is immensely important. And at people of some considered at some stature for the project. So
Yeah.
if you keep sending very junior people or technical staff, that that can also do. But it's not as if I
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
very helpful when there's a survey going on.
Right.
But the fact that when there's a survey going on, I visit once
Hmm.
and have talked to people, the cooperation level goes up hugely.
Yeah. I think some
So we have, yeah,
similar thing we have seen in Hanle as well.
yes, yes,
I
yes.
think the
Hanle,
people there, and I think the
yeah, the
contribution.
community has to adopt you, right? So,
Right.
for example, in our case, before the approval, uh, I think they had the letter. Yes, one of the villages, Dudhala village, had written a letter to the PM,
Hmm.
asking for LIGO India to be cited at their
Oh,
because at that time we had three sites,
okay.
and they had written a letter saying please choose LIGO India at Hingoli.
Right.
I think we had the MP of Hingoli, previous MP, Rajesh Sake, who has visited the LIGO US.
Okay. Okay.
Right, so you see the interest level, right?
Yeah.
So the point is, people feel involved, so they feel that it's not someone coming and putting something there, but it's something that they have to be proud of. It's going to transform them,
Right.
and I think that has helped. I mean, the fact that Rajesh Sate, when he was in US, asked me, "What can I do for you here?" So I said, "You just go and visit one of the sites so that you know what's coming up in the district." And I think that sent a very valuable message across.
I think what I found interesting is you all rejected the Chilakere site where ISRO IIC have campuses. Any
No,
particular reason?
we didn't reject it. We were, see, there is land there. So
Hmm.
that was the first site we tried to look at. And I've been there initially. And that was even before we had even the project report put in. So September 2011,
Hmm.
from, so the problem there is there are few campuses there. And what LIGO requires is no disruptive activities.
Yeah. Okay.
And some of the plans in the campus, for example, DRDO and DRC has plans. Their plans there did not rule out that in 5 years' time there will be extremely noisy environment for them.
Yeah, I guess there is an airport as well, right? So,
It actually now has an airport.
oh, then it did not have an airport.
No, it didn't have an airport there. So it was
Oh,
already, but and also people warned me that Chandakere is going to develop into a major
yeah.
hub soon, and it has. So right, so
I,
you can see that we are wise. And in fact, we went all the way to the chief secretary. I have been to Vidyan Soda. What do you call it? Vidhan Soda, right?
and they call it
The
Vidhan Soda, yeah, in Bangalore.
Vidhan Soda, yeah. So I've been there to give a talk to the chief secretary and all the directors of the people involved in the Chandakere site were there, and I presented LIGO India to them.
Hmm.
And essentially, the question asked was, would you guys be happy to have us co-located there? And they essentially pointed out, various activities that would actually potentially happen, and they can't rule out that happening,
Oh,
and that essentially will ruin the site for us. So we
right.
moved out of Singapore.
Right, right. Because land is like open and it's like available. I guess that noise will be the issue for you guys.
So noise was the issue. So then we tried North Karnataka, but there's a Air Force base at Bidar. No, Bidar? Yeah. There's a lot of not Bidar. Sorry, Bidar.
Karwar?
No, no, North Karnataka. There is
So just I'm switching my internet connection 1 minute. Yeah. Yeah, sir, I'm back. It got really slow.
yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so North Karnataka is what we were searching for. We had also a site near the Andhra Karnataka border, which we had looked at, and various sites.
Yeah, I'd seen that map and the seismic map which you all. I
So
don't know
there
if
were
that paper
about
I have.
39 leads we followed up, and of which I think 10, 15 were seriously followed up. 10 maybe were very seriously followed up. And the site we are finally at is essentially largely due to a fantastic person who happened to, join the site search, Dr. Sharad Gaonkar.
Okay.
He was, he retired as the senior deputy director general of GSI, Geological Survey of India, and his specialization was seismology. So he also is a very, he's of course very senior to me. So he joined us right after his retirement.
Hmm.
But he is much younger than me in capabilities. So if you go to a site with him even now, I think you should be very careful because we can run around the site. And but uh,
Hmm.
he actually homed in on this region where we have our final site, and very methodically, like North Karnataka was not working out because of the Air Force base, and then there's Maharashtra, but then there are some fault lines, and then he found a region where we could find a place, and we found it.
I was on Google. I was looking at that site. There is a big lake or reservoir or something at the
Yeah,
north.
yeah,
Isn't
yeah.
it a issue like a lot
Yeah,
of
it is
water
an
at one place?
irrigation dam, so it's not a hydroelectric dam.
Okay,
Hydroelectric dam could be a problem, but it's just a irrigation dam. So once in a while they let off water, but
okay,
that's about it. So it's
and
tiny.
right, and one of the arms goes over a small river, right? If I'm
Uh,
plotting it there, I thought it will be, but I'm
yeah,
not
no,
sure.
those are channels. Those are dry.
Okay,
They only during the rainy season. But you know that the whole line on which we will be building it
hmm.
will be transformed to the same level. So
Okay,
essentially, what you see as channels will go under as culverts, and
okay,
so don't think there would be a major problem. But what's very interesting about this site is it's also geophysically very interesting because it's much quieter than because it's all rock. So we are actually on a plateau,
okay.
and that is very good for LIGO detectors to be on a huge mass because then that mass doesn't shake.
Hmm.
If you're on soft soil, that site's there also. Um,
Right.
but Madhya Pradesh and Karnataka, some parts of Karnataka, and some parts of Maharashtra. So we couldn't be on the western side because that's seismic. Pune is seismic.
Right.
Um, so it's kind of interesting. But we are in what is called the Deccan Plateau, and Deccan Plateau is by and large quite seismically quite strange.
Yeah, I was watching Somak Rai Chaudhary sir's one of his presentations, I guess, on YouTube. There he
Hmm.
mentioned that it's almost 10 times quieter in seismically than the ones in Hanford and the other two
It's
Lagos.
not 10, but yeah, it's a factor of few, five.
Okay, he also mentioned that you all got access to Cartosat imagery
Yes,
to
yes.
hunt.
So that was also another interesting story because we were in this situation that we were wanted to finalize the sites,
Hmm.
but we could not send seismic. Sorry, what do you call them? Survey teams. The
Okay.
survey teams required district approval. Then district will say, "What project are you coming from?"
Hmm.
Right? And we didn't have a officially this thing. So then this Cartosat thing came from the fact that you know the Bhuvan maps of ISRO.
Yeah.
So this is just like the Google map.
Yeah, I made
I was aware of
a
that.
video
So I used
recently.
to do that just to feel more patriotic. So every site, I used to have a Google map and a Google map. And someday I was reading up about how the Bhuvan maps are made, and then it occurred to me because of what I know about from my CMB experiences of you know. So I realized that Cartosat data must be much higher resolution
Yeah, yeah.
than what is given in Bhuvan map. And so then at that time, our then director Ajit Kimbhavi in Ayuka put me in touch with Kiran Kumar, who is the director of Space Application Center.
He
So I
was.
personally went there.
When? Which year are you talking about here?
This is 2014 or something.
Okay, he became chairman, I guess, right after that.
Yeah,
Yeah, after
soon
that.
after that, he became
Okay.
chairman of ISRO. But I went there when he was still the SAC director. And after that, what was decided is around every shortlisted site, they would give us a swath of high resolution data.
Hmm.
And it was so good. The data, again, Sharad and there's also Professor Rajesh Naik at IISc Kolkata, who became experts in seismology. I mean, Sharad of Kramkar was, of course, an expert, but Rajesh Naik is actually a gravitational wave person, but he started working on seismic things
Hmm.
as well as all these taking this Cartosat data, converting it into you know 2D land profile.
Hmm.
And these were so good that Tata Engineering Services, the consultants, Tata Engineering, TC, say Tata Consultant Engineers, right?
Okay.
Um, they did engineering feasibility survey studies
Hmm.
using that site data.
So you all got only imagery, or even the DEM data as well, the
Yeah,
elevation models.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We had digital elevation models and
Okay.
very very accurate. So after this site, after this, we have of course had a regular survey with the survey team on the ground, and then we have matched both of them. They match exactly.
Oh,
Yeah, they're absolutely perfect match. So
I recently made a video on Bhuvan, and that
hmm.
blew up like almost 14 lakh views or something in a week. So people did not know. Now
Oh,
people know that
yeah,
is.
actually, people should know because Bhuvan has things which, particularly if you're not in a big city,
Yeah.
it has a big advantage because it shows village boundaries, it
Like
shows
district boundaries, then
tehsils, and
yeah.
so those informations are not that information is not there in
Yeah,
Bhuvan.
even you can see Corona satellite imagery that which US had launched 50 years ago, and you can
Yeah,
then overlay them on top of the new image. It's really
right.
interesting. Okay, sir. I think some of my people, like uh, my subscribers, have some questions for you.
Okay, sure.
Yeah. Okay. How different Indigo construction will be? I think this is answered.
Hmm.
Mechanism existing ones. I think this also you answered. Yeah, this I think this you have answered. North India has vast empty lands like barren ones. Why choose Maharashtra? I think
Hmm.
you've answered
North
this.
India is seismically more active,
Okay.
because of the Himalayas.
Okay. So one thing I did not get is reduction in the search zone with the
Hmm.
two LIGOs, and when LIGO India comes in, the area of search which we can do with our other telescopes,
Hmm.
optical and other wavelengths. How does it work? Like triangulating, if it is,
That's triangulation.
but what
It's
if it
just a
is
tiny
come?
distance. Hmm?
What if it is coming
So
along the plane of the LIGOs?
yeah, so there are certain directions which we would be less sensitive to in terms of triangulation. But triangulation works best. I mean, if a source is coming exactly along the line joining two of the detectors, it will be difficult. But on the other hand, you should realize on a big globe, the detector here and detector here, even if they're aligned, in 3D they are not aligned because this is
Right,
on this side of the globe, this is on,
right,
and the Earth is transparent to gravitational waves.
right.
So for gravitational waves, these are these three floating detectors, and so that's why there was a lot of worry people had about whether we will find the site where we can get an optimal orientation.
Hmm.
But then we decided after some analysis that it was not worth making that a very strong criteria because that ruled out many sites because there's no site on which you can build a detector in two particular orientations.
Right,
It's the land has to be fairly flat in two directions. That itself is a big limitation. Normally runways are easy to find,
right.
but runway with another perpendicular runway is what
Hmm.
you need for LIGO, and that is very difficult.
Okay.
Um, so
Uh,
that is, I think, the reason you have. That's the answer to your question there.
yeah.
But
I think the vacuum that you're aiming is our nanotor, right? So I was
yes.
recently talking to Rohan from Bellatrix Aerospace. He was
Hmm.
saying it was really expensive to run even like a small. They have vacuum chambers like size of this room or something.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it's around like 70,000 for an hour electricity cost. So will you once in vacuum, will this always remain in vacuum, or like how will you
Yes.
cycle
So
this?
the point is, the idea of LIGO is that you evacuate the tubes. You don't pump them at all later.
Okay.
Okay. It's just that the construction. That's why the vacuum. Although people, uh, ask where is the technological challenge. The technology, even to make the vacuum infrastructure, which is totally leak-proof, in the sense that it's not small holes that we are worried about. That is possible if you have weak welding or something somewhere, but it's just that the metal itself outgases
Oh.
at that nanotor. You
Oh.
make sure that the metal doesn't contain enough hydrogen and things like that. So once you have, so it takes few weeks of baking. You heat the tubes and you keep evacuating it, and then you reach your desired
Oh,
vacuum thing, and then you shut it off with gate valve, right? And then the main portions of the thing where there are no active optical elements remain shut out even if when you are putting the thing. So it's like a thermos flask where you evacuated it, you don't keep back, you know.
right,
So
right,
it's
right.
just like that. But in a thermos flask with 10 million liters, you evacuated in
Got
10
it.
million.
So then why is this done in a runs? Why are they LIGO runs? Like what prevents LIGO
That
from?
is, that's largely because we want to improve the detector. So from 2013, so that's where the point a lot of people again when people say, oh, but you are getting the detector from US.
Hmm,
We are getting the detector as was put in 2013, and we'll be running a detector as the US detectors are in 2026, right?
right.
So 20, this is like 10 years of evolution,
Hmm,
and many things have changed. In particular, by the time very soon in US, this break and run, uh, there'll be squeezed light injection. Okay, that is
okay.
something that we are building directly. So our detector will start off
Hmm,
having a squeezed light option.
right.
Okay, so the detector that will be set up in India in 2024 is going to be a decade more modern
Oh,
than the equipment that came in. So many of the control racks and all that, they're much better things. So of course, if you want, we can use what is available there, but there's much better stuff available now. Even the vacuum technology has evolved a lot from when it was set up in 1997-8 period in US. They have issues which we want to avoid,
okay.
and the vacuum technology, vacuum welding, all these have improved immensely. So we will be taking those into account.
Okay. How is this syncing done within the clocks? Your clocks will have to be synced between all three LIGOs, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
understand this might be a solved problem, but I'm just curious
This is
how.
solved problem in the sense that you always see time is synced between countries. So
Right.
every country has a master clock, and so we will be, NPL will be providing us the time.
Mhm.
We will have our own atomic clocks there, and so that will sync to the NPL clock, and NPL will sync with that, and then we can maintain that kind of uh, stable kind of timing
Right.
between the.
There is a lot of curiosity. I'll make this the last question. I think we are over time.
Mhm.
How can like now this my audience is very young, almost 20% are below 18. So they want to
Okay.
know as they are studying how can they then in the future contribute via research or whatever.
See, I'll tell you, one thing to realize is we can contribute in many, many ways. Once you have a major initiative like this, there's a range of possibilities. You know, typically a small experimental research or this thing, you have to be very good in that field only and this thing. That's not true. I mean, here we have vacuum engineers, we have controls engineers, we
Right.
have, people who are very good at setting up optics, very good at even maintaining patiently maintaining orientations and this thing. So it's a whole range of skills. We need scientists,